They went after our 5,000 students at our event there of high school and college kids. And look, I get attacked all the time. People say false things. I'm a public figure. But when you go after 16 and 17-year-olds that travel from across the country that then have to live for the rest of their life with a shadow over them because someone at ABC says that they might be linked to neo-Nazis. But look, what did it take for us to get to the point of an apology? We had to threaten a lawsuit, Jesse. And by the way, we're still entertaining it.
The culture shift between right and left authoritarianism, and now people don't recognize that if you just stop looking at it in terms of red and blue, look at the actions, whether it's war, suppression of free speech, pharmacological interventions that are mandatory, whatever it is, that used to all be associated with the authoritative right, the authoritarian right. And now those things are being embraced by the left. And I just think it's just an ideology thing. And I think we get confused and we think we're on the right side. We're on the right side. And if it's our side that's saying this, for sure that's the right thing to do. And no one's critically thinking about this.
Joe Rogan is the gateway drug for young men that thought they were Democrats to become MAGA. Joe Rogan is the bridge. And on that bridge, they'll see RFK. They'll see Elon Musk.
What if a single careless remark from a celebrated television personality could ignite a national firestorm, not just angering a few, but exposing a chasm so deep between media elites and everyday people that it leaves one side utterly speechless? This isn't a hypothetical. It's the story of how Sunny Hostin, a prominent voice on The View, found herself at the epicenter of a brutal takedown, orchestrated by two vastly different critics who, without coordinating, dismantled her public persona piece by piece.
Her disgusting, gross elitism and her complete out-of-touch nature with respect to the rest of the world. Sunny Hostin goes on The View and decides now would be a great time to dump all over the so-called uneducated.
What we did not have is white women who voted about 52%, right, for Donald Trump. Uneducated white women, is my understanding. You have Latino men, actually, voting more for him, and you have and black men was not the story. We're not the story here because they voted almost 80% for the vice president.
Right. Just because you didn't go to college doesn't mean you're stupid, and it doesn't mean that you don't have wisdom. You can go to college and get a bunch of irrelevant facts about how men can allegedly give birth or whatever they teach.
It all began with a shocking accusation hurled from the comfortable perch of a daytime talk show. Sunny Hostin, looking directly into the camera, implied that a gathering of thousands of conservative high school and college students at a Turning Point USA summit might somehow be linked with the vile ideology of neo-Nazis. Imagine being one of those teenagers, perhaps 16 or 17, having traveled across the country, full of excitement and idealism, only to hear yourself and your peers smeared with such a disgusting label on national television. The implication was monstrous, threatening to cast a dark shadow over these young individuals for years to come, all because a host on a morning show decided to be utterly reckless with her words. This wasn't just a minor slip-up, it felt like a deliberate, venomous dart aimed at the heart of a rising generation of conservative youth. But the targets and their defenders were not about to let such an attack go unanswered.
The final point I'll say is this, is Sunny, you guys thought that abortion was going to be this like quasi-zealot religious issue. I'm pro-life. If people in the audience aren't, that's fine. What I'm saying though, what gives me promise, and I think we can all agree on this, is that there are other issues that should animate and drive our politics other than this very divisive one. And I was really encouraged by that, Megan. Very encouraged, because the media was forcing this as an up or down vote on a referendum on a highly complicated, very emotional, very personal issue. And it turned out the American people were like, yeah, actually, these other 6 things matter more.
Charlie Kirk, the founder of Turning Point USA, didn't just issue a statement of outrage. He prepared for war. He understood that this was more than just an insult. It was character assassination on a mass scale, and the students deserved more than a half-hearted apology. They demanded accountability. When The View initially seemed to brush off the severity, Kirk and his organization made their intentions clear. A lawsuit was imminent. Suddenly, the calculus changed. Faced with the genuine prospect of legal action, the network and the show were forced to issue a retraction. but to many, it felt like an apology extracted under duress, lacking the sincerity of genuine remorse. It was a stark display of power dynamics, a media Goliath forced to concede, not by persuasion, but by the credible threat of legal consequence. Yet, even this public climb down couldn't seem to dampen the underlying arrogance that had fueled the initial slander. It was as if Sunny Hostin hadn't learned a thing.
Charlie Kirk's the founder and CEO of Turning Point USA and the author of the new book, The College Scam. So, Charlie, do you accept the View's apology?
I mean, regardless of whether or not I accept it, the question is, do our students accept it? That's really what's at heart here.
Well, it is the show that people love to hate.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
They get so much hate watching viral clips of them saying ridiculous things. I mean,
yeah.
it is a rabies-infested henhouse.
Incredibly, shortly after the forced apology over the Student Summit comments, Hostin seemed to double down on her out-of-touch pronouncements. This time, her verbal fire was directed at a different demographic: uneducated white women. She mused on air that a significant percentage of this group voted for Donald Trump, her tone dripping with an elitism that suggested their votes were somehow less valid, their intellects less keen, simply because they might not possess a college degree. As if that wasn't enough, she then pivoted to Latino and black male voters, expressing a kind of bewildered surprise at their increasing support for Republicans, framing it almost as a perplexing betrayal of where she thought their loyalties should lie. The mask, if there ever truly was one, had completely slipped. This wasn't about nuanced political analysis. It was a condescending dismissal of vast swathes of the American electorate who dared to think differently from her. And Charlie Kirk, watching this unfold, knew it was time to bring out the heavy artillery of facts.
And the nerve of this woman to whom the country has given so much to try to dump on people who didn't go to college. Look at you, look at your achievements. How do you like the so-called uneducated now, Sunny?
Yeah, and again, by the way, rarely do you get the answer to a question in the question. And her whole question is exactly why there was a rebellion against them.
Yes.
Listen, just because you didn't go to college doesn't mean you're stupid, and it doesn't mean that you don't have wisdom. I always differentiate between knowledge and wisdom. You can go to college and get a bunch of irrelevant facts about how men can allegedly give birth or whatever they teach. I mean, or about North African lesbian poetry. Okay, that's fine, I guess.
Charlie Kirk didn't resort to name-calling or histrionics. He calmly and methodically began to dismantle Hostin's entire elitist framework. He pointed out the glaring hypocrisy of millionaire TV personalities, ensconced in their ivory towers, lecturing working-class Americans about wisdom and morality. He brought forth data, inconvenient truths for Hostin's narrative, showing the significant shifts among minority voters, particularly Latino and black men, who were increasingly aligning with conservative principles. Tired of being taken for granted and spoken down to, Kirk directly challenged the uneducated slur, passionately arguing that a college diploma is not the sole determinant of intelligence or wisdom. He championed the common sense and lived experience of farmers, truck drivers, electricians, and small business owners, contrasting their practical knowledge with what he described as the irrelevant facts sometimes peddled in academic settings, like North African lesbian poetry or theories about men giving birth. This wasn't just a defense of a particular group of voters, it was a full-throated assault on the condescending worldview that Sunny Hostin had come to represent.
The episode of you when you were on The View, when you were running for president, you got introduced as our friend Donald Trump.
But does he really want to add President of the United States to his resume? A lot of people would like him to. Please let's find out, and please welcome my friend, Donald Trump.
That's right.
Whoopi Goldberg gives you a big hug and a kiss. Joy Behar gives you a big hug. Barbara Walters gives you a big hug. And then you actually started winning in the polls, and then the machine started working towards you.
That red hat that says "Make America Great Again." Might as well just put a sticker on the hat.
Kirk broadened his offensive, targeting not just Hostin's specific comments, but the entire media bubble she inhabited. He painted a picture of an elite class of media figures who, cocooned by fame and fortune, begin to mistake their high ratings and hefty paychecks for genuine insight and moral authority. The View, in Kirk's estimation, became a potent symbol of this profound disconnect, a panel of hosts seemingly speaking only to each other and their like-minded audience, increasingly increasingly out of sync with the realities and concerns of ordinary Americans. He accused them of deliberately smearing events like the successful Turning Point USA Student Summit. Why? Because if their audience learned the truth, that thousands of young people would willingly spend their own money during an expensive summer to travel across the country to hear conservative speakers, it might cause them to question the very narratives their network pushed daily. This manufactured outrage, Kirk argued, stood in stark contrast to the genuine anxieties of people grappling with inflation, border issues, and the education of their children. But while Kirk was meticulously dissecting the flawed logic of the media elite, another voice from an entirely different corner of the media landscape was preparing to unleash a barrage of pure, unadulterated mockery.
Talking to some of the best lawyers out there that are experts in this, and as you know, these things can be very complicated. There's a lot of facts and circumstances around it, but we're not going to let this go, because you should not be able to smear 5,000 high school and college kids and then just be able to walk away with it. And the reason they felt they needed to do that, Jesse, is because if they told their audience the truth, that when gas is the most expensive it's been, flights are super expensive, that 5,000 kids decided to spend a weekend in summer traveling across the country to go hear from conservative speakers, maybe the audience of The View would think twice about all of their ideas. That's why they felt so compelled to try to smear our wonderful summit this last weekend.
Yeah. Enter Joe Rogan. On his massively popular podcast, Rogan didn't bother with pie charts or policy papers. He went straight for the jugular, not by attacking Sunny Hostin by name initially, but by ridiculing the entire culture of shows like The View. He famously described the program as a rabies-infested henhouse, a place where he considered the hosts to be, on average, among the dumbest people on television, or at the very least, so ideologically driven they wore impenetrable blinders. Rogan highlighted the sheer absurdity of the political theater, pointing out how many of these same media figures, who now portrayed Donald Trump as a modern-day Hitler, had once welcomed him with open arms, hugs, and kisses on their shows before he became a political threat. He contrasted the shallow, soundbite-driven, and often hysterical nature of The View with the long-form, nuanced, and often challenging conversations he prided himself on fostering. Rogan didn't need to debate Hostin on policy. His casual, dismissive scorn for the entire genre she represented was, in many ways, far more devastating, and the internet, with its insatiable appetite for such drama, was poised to amplify every cutting remark.
I get it. I also hate Joy Behar, so I don't love you, but I also hate that squawking bird, so I hate the whole thing. And frankly, that show, you want to talk about a show that set women back, is The View. You want to talk about that show, if the CIA is engineering Antifa and fucking the Capitol riot, some crazy misogynist engineered The View, because there's nothing worse than The View. In terms of, like, there are so many brilliant women out there, none of them are on The View. None of them have gone near the set of The View.
The digital dam broke. Clips of Charlie Kirk's calm, logical takedowns alongside Joe Rogan's sarcastic and scathing roasts began to flood every social media platform imaginable. Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, Reddit, everywhere you looked, Sunny Hostin was trending, but not for any accolades. She had become the unwilling star of a viral meme fest, the embodiment of out-of-touch media elitism. Debate teams were reportedly studying Kirk's segments as masterclasses in argumentation, while TikTokers were lip-syncing Rogan's rants with comedic flair. It was a perfect storm. Kirk had laid the factual groundwork, exposing the intellectual bankruptcy of Hostin's positions, while Rogan swooped in with the cultural coup de grace, articulating the visceral frustration many felt with such performative media personalities. The synergy was unintentional but devastatingly effective, and through it all, a curious silence emanated from Sunny Hostin and her camp. No direct rebuttal, no engagement with the specifics of Kirk's data, no clapback to Rogan's mockery. This wasn't just a bad week in the news cycle for Hostin, it was the beginning of a public and brutal shredding of her carefully cultivated on-air persona.
You get people thinking, like, if you could stop Hitler by any means necessary, wouldn't you stop Hitler? And so they equate Donald Trump with Hitler and go, here you go, this is our modern Hitler. Do you see what Whoopi Goldberg said?
What'd she say?
Whoopi Goldberg said that Biden could arrest all the Republicans and put them in jail. You just need to see how unhinged this kind of thinking is. Well, you know what Joe Biden could do? Joe Biden, you have to see it, because It's so
on TV.
crazy.
She said it's
on television.
The combined weight of Kirk's meticulous deconstruction and Rogan's blunt ridicule had a profound, almost immediate impact on Sunny Hostin's public credibility. It was a fascinating study in contrasts. Kirk, the polished conservative intellectual, breaking down arguments with facts and figures. Rogan, the everyman podcaster, laughing at the sheer absurdity of it all. Yet these two vastly different approaches converged on a single, undeniable point. Sunny Hostin and the media culture she represented seemed dangerously disconnected from the pulse of a significant portion of the country. The View itself, once a staple of daytime television, began to look different to many viewers, less like a forum for diverse opinions and more like an insulated echo chamber where applause lines were mistaken for profound truths. Sunny Hostin continued to appear on the show, of course, sitting in her usual chair, sipping from her mug, the studio audience applauding on cue. But for a vast online audience, and likely many watching at home, a shadow now hung over her pronouncements. The silence from Hostin regarding the core of the critiques was perhaps her loudest and most damning statement. It wasn't a strategic retreat, it felt like an admission of defeat.
Has to be, you know, if you average out the View hosts, among the dumbest people on television. And it's like they say the thing that people are thinking, but they say it very directly, so they expose whatever truth. But
I don't think some of them are dumb.
You don't think so?
No, I don't think Sunny Hostin.
You think it's deliberate?
I think she's ideologically driven, and they have blinders on for sure. I don't think Sunny's dumb, but Whoopi is certainly not the brightest person. And what she just said just doesn't make any sense. It's just like so silly to say. It's not a well thought out.
In the end, the saga of Sunny Hostin's televised missteps and the subsequent public dismantling served as a stark, almost brutal illustration of a wider phenomenon. A media personality, accustomed to delivering pronouncements from an unassailable perch, found her words not just challenged, but ridiculed and refuted on a massive scale. The swiftness and ferocity of the backlash, fueled by both cold logic and biting humor, revealed a deep well of public frustration with what many perceive as media arrogance and elitism. It underscored the evolving media landscape where alternative voices possess the power to hold mainstream narratives accountable in real time. The episode leaves us with a lingering question. What happens when the audience, armed with their own platforms and a growing skepticism, simply refuses to be lectured anymore? The echoes of this takedown suggest they might just change the channel, or more powerfully, change the conversation entirely.